going to be accepted out of the ones that they bid. Okay, so make sure when they're bidding on these properties that they like every one of those properties that they're bidding on equally, because they never know which one they might get if they're bidding on more than one property, if one of those is accepted. So please keep that in mind, let your buyers know that. Investors, of course, they can bid on as many properties as they want because it's an investor. They're buying it as an investor, so they can buy more than one property. How will you be notified? Of course, I mentioned that. You'll be notified by HUD Home Store. Closing costs that are paid automatically by HUD. This is important to know. I mentioned some of these in the benefits. The proration of your property taxes and any special assessments, such as HOA fees, utility bills, are paid by HUD automatically. Settlement fee, I mentioned that is paid completely by HUD. And of course, the recording fees and charges for the deed. Now, you might notice that title is not in there. Well, title is not paid by HUD. So keep that in mind. A buyer is responsible to pay for their own title in a HUD transaction. And then the document fee is also paid automatically by HUD. Closing costs, I mentioned closing costs, 3%. HUD will pay up to 3% of the buyer's cost. And here's how commissions work. Selling agent gets up to 3%, listing agent gets 3%, unless otherwise noted. Here's the key word on the selling agent where it says up to 3%. And here's why it's up to, because you have the option of reducing your commission if you wanted to on a transaction or a bid that you wanted to be aggressive on. If you had not so good luck in getting bids accepted, maybe a few dollars. Every dollar counts when you're talking highest net. So sometimes a few dollars will matter if you're getting that accepted when you bid. So you can maneuver with that if you wanted to in regards to getting that bid accepted. So overbidding, this is important. We're going to talk about this a little bit. Okay, so here's how overbidding works. And I'll give you an example because this is the best way when there's actually a scenario to explain this. So let's say you have a list price of a house that's $200,000. And your buyer has had bad luck, they've kept bidding and they haven't been winning any bids, so they're deciding to be a little more aggressive this time. So they want to come in at $205,000. They're welcome to do so. However, they need to realize, and every buyer needs to realize this, that that extra $5,000 that they're overbidding is their own responsibility that they have to pay in the form of cash. Okay? It cannot be financed into loan. HUD will not reduce the purchase price to that, or it will not increase the purchase price to that, because the appraisal that we have on file, remember, is at $200,000 because it's at whatever the appraisal is. The list price, the original one, is at whatever the appraisal came in at. So the bidder can bid higher, but you cannot lend on something higher than the appraised amount. So keep that in mind. That extra $5,000 will have to be paid in the form of cash. Now, if the buyer is paying through conventional financing, or they're paying cash, then that's a different story. If they're paying cash, then it's up to them how much they want to pay. If they're getting conventional financing, at that time, since there's an FHA appraisal on file, the buyer is going to be requested to pay for their own appraisal and order a conventional appraisal because that's what the type of financing that they're getting. And now let's say if that conventional appraisal came in at $205,000, then the buyer would not have to pay anything out of pocket. The appraisal covers it. But if that conventional appraisal also came in at $200,000, then that buyer has to pay that $5,000 out of pocket, or at that time they will submit a form, cancellation request form, and they can cancel their loan, their transaction, and get their earnest money deposit back. So that's how it works when you're using conventional or paying cash. Now, another scenario. Let's just say the list price originally was $200,000. Well, now there's a price reduction that happened, and the price reduction is now $180,000. What will happen is, if the buyer decides they want to be aggressive and they want to bid $190,000, so they're bidding $10,000 over the current list price. Well, guess what? At that time, the buyer does not need to come in with that extra $10,000 because the original appraisal on file, is already appraising at $200,000, so it covers it. So in that situation, the buyer would not have to come in out of pocket. Keep in mind though, an appraisal is only good for up to 4 months. Okay, so the appraisal date will actually be on the HUDHomestore.com listing. You'll see when that appraisal was done, so you'll kind of know when the expiration date is coming up on that particular appraisal. Now, one thing about appraisals, if you have an accepted bid and you're in the middle of escrow and the appraisal is coming on to expiration there, well, at that time, you may get an extension of 30 days. HUD accepts that. Of course, your lender will have to do that. They'll have to extend it for 30 days, so you don't have to order a new appraisal. But let's just say it's already expired before the winning bid, and now you have a winning bid on that property. Well, guess what? If you're getting FHA financing, your buyer would still have to pay for a new FHA appraisal because that one is already expired. So at that time, it's going to be your buyer's responsibility to order a new appraisal. Okay? Is everybody kind of clear on how overbidding works?
That last paragraph.
The last paragraph. Okay. So last paragraph was about
The thing expired for 4 months.
yeah.
I just had one of those where the appraisal was expired, and I found out the hard way that if the appraisal is soon to be expired, you have to have it already through underwriting before the lender can actually request it to be extended for 30 days. So if it's already past the 90 days or you have not submitted to underwriting yet, you're going to have to get a new appraisal. Right?
Okay, that's a lender thing.
Does it show on the side when the date the appraisal was done?
Yeah, the appraisal date is on the actual sort of website. So going back, I think, does that help you with that, or you want me to read it? Okay. Okay, so if an appraisal, if you're in the middle of escrow, okay, you've got the accepted bid in the middle of escrow, and let's say the appraisal is coming due to expire. Well, the underwriter at that time of the lender can extend the appraisal for an extra 30 days. Okay, the underwriter is the one that does that. So they can extend it for another 30 days just to be able to close that escrow to avoid ordering a new appraisal. Okay, because whenever we order a new appraisal in the middle of the transaction, you might have issues come up with a new appraisal, things might start to fall apart. So you want to make sure that you can extend that appraisal. That only happens during the escrow period, and the underwriter is the one that accepts that, does that request. Okay, so is that kind of clear on that? Okay, awesome. Okay, moving forward, how do you cancel your bid? Due to the unfortunate task that you're going to cancel a bid, you can do that prior to bid acceptance. It isn't a little warm here. Are we falling asleep? Yeah, it is kind of warm here. Okay. How can you cancel a client's bid? So let's say before the bid acceptance, the agents can go in on HUDHomestore.com and review their bid and cancel, modify, or withdraw it at any time. Okay? Now, if the bid is already accepted, how do you cancel your bid? Well, at that time, you're going to have to go to our website, blvresources.com, and download the cancellation form. When that form is downloaded, you complete it, you send a request to us through the email or fax numbers on the screen. You may get these from the Seller Broker Handbook if you download it, and you can do that and send it to us. We process those within 2 business days. Okay. Now, HUD has an as-is policy. HUD makes no representations or warranties concerning the condition of the property, and will make no repairs to the property. This last part, I don't know how many times I can reiterate that, but I'll mention it again. They will make no repairs to the property. HUD does not repair properties. They will not repair properties. They will not give credit to repair. HUD will not repair any properties. So HUD does not repair any properties. They do not repair any properties. All right, I think I'll put it on. Okay. Buyer's home inspection. Of course, BLV Resources recommends that the purchaser retain a services of a home inspection company. Keep in mind the purchaser has 15 days from contract ratification to conduct a home inspection. This is really important that you as agents try to keep up with your buyers. They need to get that home inspection done. The earlier they do it, the better. And here's why. You don't want to wait until the 15th day that they're allowed to do the inspection for them to finally get an inspection done. Here's why. Because if anything happens and they want to back out and cancel, you've wasted your time during that whole escrow period. We've wasted our time. Everybody's wasted their time. We all know that our time is all money. So to avoid that, be proactive, tell your buyers, keep up with them, that they need to order that as soon as the contract is ratified to get that out of the way so we can move forward. Please do so. Utilities may be turned on for up to 72 hours due to the buyer's inspection at the buyer's expense. Here's a funny thing that happened one time. Now, depending on which field service manager you go, they have different rules in regards to the amount of money that they're going to request for a deposit, if a house needs to be winterized, if it's not, this and that. Well, you're going to find that out when you talk to the field service manager company to request that for your utilities to be turned on. But here's a situation where there was a home that the buyer had that went to the inspection, and they contacted the field service manager. Well, there was winterization involved. So the question arose is, do we have to have this house winterized? Well, certain areas, certain states, there's certain ways that the field service manager looks at it. In this particular case, anything over 2,000 feet in elevation would be required to do a winterization. Well, the buyer was asking, well, do we need to winterize this house? So I told her, I said, it's only in the situations where it's an elevation of 2,000 feet or higher. And the buyer responded, they said, oh, well, the house that we want to bid on is 2,400 square feet. So sometimes you get, buyers that are agents maybe not have the idea in regards to what we're talking about. It's actually the elevation, 2,000 feet or higher. I don't know if Tucson is 2,000 feet elevation? 300? Okay, so 2,300. Okay, so winterization would probably be required here between the months of, I think it's September to May, if I'm not mistaken. I would never know that. I would think that's being in the desert that you might not need it, but anyway. And so, again, please don't wait for this inspection to happen. Do it the first thing. Here's one thing I do want to go over with you. Everybody received a handout. One of the handouts is a HUD forfeiture and extension policy. Please read this carefully. And I want you all to be aware that the 15-day inspection is not considered like a free look. It's not